Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's dive into today's headlines. The Pentagon says US strikes have pushed back Iran's nuclear program by up to 2 years after destroying 3 critical targets, with intel estimates putting the damage probably closer to 2 years. Meanwhile, the US State Department calls it unacceptable that Iran has suspended IAEA cooperation and demands Tehran return to full compliance immediately. Hamas says it's reviewing a final ceasefire plan, but insists Israel must withdraw from Gaza while Netanyahu vows to eliminate the group. Trump claims Israel has agreed to conditions for a 60-day truce, with most of Israel's cabinet backing the deal and Gazans hoping it ends the war. President Trump says the US will impose a 20% tariff on Vietnam imports under a new last-minute trade agreement. The deal avoids a steeper 46% levy and ensures Vietnam will charge no tariffs on US products as other countries scramble to reach deals. A Russian attack on Ukraine's southern port city of Odessa has left 5 injured, including a 7-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl, authorities have said. Governor Oleh Kipper reports a multi-story building and civilian sites were damaged, with 6 apartments destroyed overnight. A woman in her 70s was killed and 2 others injured when debris from a downed Ukrainian drone fell on a residential area in Russia's Lipetsk region. Governor Igor Armonotov said the drone was destroyed, but parts crashed into homes near the regional capital. An Indonesian ferry carrying 65 people sank near Bali, leaving 4 dead and 30 still missing, according to the search and rescue agency. The Kumptanu Pratana Jaya went down just 30 minutes after leaving East Java as rescuers battle rough seas to find survivors. British lawmakers have voted to designate pro-Palestinian campaign group Palestine Action as a terrorist organisation after a military base raid. The group, known for targeting firms linked to Israel like Ebit Systems, says it uses disruptive direct action in its protests. A massive explosion demolished a pyrotechnics building in rural northern California, leaving 7 people missing, authorities say. 2 survivors are being treated for injuries while the fire marshal investigates the cause of the deadly blast. Now we move to today's top story, where Donald Trump's signature tax and spending bill is facing a major showdown in Congress, with a procedural vote stalled and Republicans split. As late of Wednesday night, the House was split 217 to 207 against the bill moving forward, with 8 Republicans still undecided and party leaders struggling to win them over. 5 Republican lawmakers are currently blocking progress on President Trump's tax and spending bill, voting no in a key procedural vote. Trump took to Truth Social to express frustration, writing, "For Republicans, this should be an easy yes vote. Ridiculous." Speaker Mike Johnson has kept the vote open for more than 3 hours as GOP leaders meet behind closed doors to try to salvage the plan. The bill, dubbed the One Big Beautiful Bill, promises deep tax cuts, but has sparked fierce infighting over its impact on the national debt and social safety net programs. If the procedural vote passes, a final debate and vote could take place later today. But for now, Trump's legislative legacy hangs in the balance. We're joined by Shruti Dasgupta, who is a foreign affairs expert, joining us live from New Delhi to discuss this ongoing legal process in more detail. Shruti, thank you very much for joining us. If Trump's signature tax and bill fails here, what does that mean for his influence over a divided Republican Party?
Greetings, Thomas. Thank you for inviting me. I believe that he is very vicious in terms of political vengeance, and we've already heard rumors of the very same coming through. A few of the ones who were posted when J.D. Vance had to weigh in at a 50-50 vote to pass through the Senate. At that time, whoever opposed it, one of those, I wouldn't like to name names, but they are facing considerable pressure from the Trump group as such. And that group itself is very well powered, very well oiled, and it's a very well funded group. So anybody who stands in his way of making this come true, this one big beautiful bill become reality, is going to feel a lot of vengeance coming their way. We've already seen the entire breakdown between Trump and Musk over this very same bill, and it is not. And it shows that Trump is willing to accept personal losses in terms of friendships and camaraderie, as well as business relationships, as well, and is willing to go a step further to ensure political throwdowns happening in relation to this bill. If it does not pass, and I doubt that it would be stopped, he will make it happen. He has made it happen before. By hook or by crook, he'll make it happen. But it will come at very dear costs to the nation, as well as the people who want to oppose it.
Yes, Shruti, and before we get into that, to the impact of this bill, if it does pass through the US legislature, I want to first talk about Donald Trump's messaging here. We've had a very unique approach to the US president in regards to his Truth Social posts and his public appearances, of course. He singled out Republicans for voting against him in a branch which is supposed to be an independent body. What are your views on how Donald Trump has approached this situation?
He's always dealt any situation in a very head-on, cataclysmic manner. He makes sure that everybody knows who is the root of the problem. He doesn't use the political diplomacy or soft words. He doesn't kind of softball anything. He makes sure everybody knows who is the enemy, who is the problem in his perspective. So he takes it head-on. It does end up creating problem for others because they end up gaining, because he's a truth first, social first, and White House press office later kind of a president. So it end up gaining the other person or the opposing party a lot of haters online, as well as in their own community. So instead of taking it on, making sure that he doesn't have any public meltdowns with somebody, he's not scared of it. So his approach is, you will follow the line or you will fall. It is his very simple philosophy he goes by. I believe it is inspired by one of his shows that he used to do, Intern was it called or something? Then he would say, The Apprentice, you're correct. So he would say, you're fired. And that's exactly what happens to anybody who is part of his team but doesn't toe the line. So he is very, very vocal, very, very obvious, and everybody knows who he's targeting. He doesn't mix words.
Shruti, now let's finally get into what this bill actually means. It has faced widespread criticism, with some saying it only benefits the wealthiest 1% in America. If this bill does get passed, what does it mean for the broader American public?
I don't know why anybody is surprised by what the bill promises. He already made those promises during his campaign. And this bill is going to make the wealthy more wealthier, but it is also going to fulfill on his promises of not putting taxes on tipping and a lot of the other versions, which is going to ensure that the groups that he was targeting, senior citizens, I believe, have been part of his concerns as well in this taxation bill. So they tend to get a little bit more. I believe the major impact will be towards the socialist programs that were being run, like the Medicaid that was going to take this thing, the social security people who were taking that income starts getting taxed as well. So it does change the dynamics of the US economy once more. The wealthy get more wealthy, the poor may not feel as much pressure. The small victories of getting their tips not taxed as much would mean a big deal to his MAGA group. And beyond that, of course, the country should worry, because this is going to add a lot, trillions, if I'm not wrong, trillions to their existing debt. So the debt of the country is going to continue to spiral out of control. He may have make it seem that the tariffs and it's a hot economy and all those wonderful words he uses, that it's a hot economy, people want to invest in America and America is going to be great again, and the inflation is at the lowest and everything, but the inflation started downrating while the Biden administration was right there. So he's just riding the wave of the Biden administration's corrective actions right now in terms of inflation. His particular bill is going to ensure that the US economy goes further deep down into debt, and the debt is going to spiral out of control because it's going to keep adding to itself. So I'm not really sure of how it is going to benefit everybody or itself or even the country as a whole. But his target groups, his prime voter groups, will definitely feel that they have been taken care of. And the Republicans who voted for MAGA will probably feel vindicated when this bill passes through.
Yes, and Shruti, this obviously sees increased spending in regards to investment in ICE, in regards to in defence spending, which the US is already at the top in the world by far. We also see experts analyse this and say that 17 million people in the United States will lose their medical insurance. What are your thoughts on the possible implications, the social implications that this bill is going to have on the American consumer at large here?
The Medicaid question is something which is very serious because medical expenses is almost, I think US ranks among the top 10 countries where medical expenses are, ceiling high. So people who depend on Medicaid to ensure that their health survives are going to suffer a whole lot. But in the Medicaid, he's going to ensure that his particular groups benefit. He's not worried about all of the entire of America from the perspective of this particular bill. He's also trying to present that I'm going to bring the pharmacy bills that are going to be separately addressed, are going to bring down the prices of everything, so the healthcare would become more affordable in his point of view. So Medicaid is just going to be more of a socialist view for him. He doesn't subscribe to it. He's a very out-and-out capitalist. And these social security tax exemption being cancelled, as well as Medicaid being millions of people losing Medicaid, is going to impact a lot of the middle class. The poor residents didn't have much help, but the middle class that were depending on this to sticking to this economy are going to find it very difficult. And it's I don't think it is a very prudent bill because it is not good for the economy of US as a whole. Its repercussions may not be felt today, but the ripples will be felt at least 2 years from now. You'll find the ripples flowing through.
Okay, Shruti, thank you very much. You are staying with us, but we have reports coming in that are emerging in the US media that House Speaker Mike Johnson is saying that Republicans now have enough votes to clear the key procedural hurdle now underway, as well as to pass Donald Trump's signature mega bill. We are bringing you this as it comes. This comes after Donald Trump has demanded the legislation to be on his desk by Friday on the 4th of July. And we will keep you updated in regards to the passing of these bills and all the updates as we get them. We will now move on to our next story. Apologies, we are staying on this. This bill looks like it's about to come through, Shruti, if these reports are correct, what can we expect from this bill, and especially the future of the Republican Party now that Donald Trump's allies have openly opposed him and feel criticized? What are your views?
Create fissures in the Republican group as such. They will find themselves pushed to corners, and you will find small voices of dissent coming through, which will be stomped out by the giant elephant of MAGA. So it's not going to look good for anybody in the Republican tent to kind of oppose Trump, but as you can already see, within 6 months of him becoming the 47th president, people are not happy with his policies or his approach. He's running this entire country as which is part of the Constitution, as the single leader, single point of consolidation of power. He's leading the country in that particular way, and in fact, From there, he's taken it to a CEO level where he owns the nation per se, not really literally, but in terms of the decision-making power as well as the execution power. And anybody questioning his authority is either shuffled out of the chair that they hold or shuffled out of power completely. So this particular moves that he's making, the way he's presenting himself is very aggressive. It was appreciated in the beginning compared to the soft approach of the Biden era in the last 1 year, specifically when he was very ill. At that particular time, it was very soft. It almost felt as if they had no the president at all. So they will kind of ensure that they enjoyed this contrast. But when it comes to suppressing of personal opinions, political opinions, and making sure everybody is in consensus and are willing to join hands with him rather than being forced to join hands with him on the bill, it sends different messaging. So politically, for the Republican group, you're going to find a lot of people not very happy, despite being silenced and being made to support it, optically at least.
Yes, Shruti, thank you very much. You are staying with us for our next story. We move to the Middle East, where a new directive from Israel's Ministry of Diaspora Affairs has sparked international concern after banning dozens of legal and political advocates from the US, UK, Canada and Europe from entering the country. The order targets individuals and organisations accused of publicly supporting international legal action against Israel or calling for boycotts. Among those barred is Michael Link, a former UN Special Rapporteur, and several senior staff from an advocacy group founded by the late Jamal Khashoggi. Critics say the move stifles legitimate legal advocacy and mirrors tactics used by authoritarian regimes. Supporters of the ban argue it's a matter of national security and a necessary response to what they see as coordinated efforts to delegitimize Israel and its military. The directive may now test the US-Israel visa waiver agreement, which bars discrimination against American citizens, including those of Palestinian descent or with critical political views. As questions grow over accountability and free speech, both sides remain deeply divided over what it means for Israel's democratic values and global partnerships. We're once again joined by Shruti Dasgupta to discuss this in further detail. Shruti, this is a significant development from Israel. Do you think this new ban on foreign legal advocates could backfire by straining ties like the UK, like the US, like Canada, and testing its own democratic capability?
Well, it depends on what those foreign advocates were really doing there. Were they actually being part of the democracy in a peaceful manner, ensuring that everybody's rights and duties were perfectly in alignment with what Israel values? If they were not doing that, then Israel is within its rights to, cancel their performance inside their country within their limits. They do tend to have a large part of what the foreign groups present there tend to have very divided views on what Israel is supposed to be doing, specifically in relation to Gaza. So they tend to undermine the truth of Israel in this entire conflict, as well as promote Hamas and Gaza concepts within the boundary of Israel. So when you have somebody fighting the regime so much, it is not going to look good so well.
Shruti, Israel labels itself as the only liberal democracy in the Middle East, where obviously criticism of government action should be allowed in a liberal democracy. Doesn't this policy undermine that?
Well, let's not conflate discussing, dissent as well as creating traitorous groups. There is a difference between them. So if you are inciting rebel from inside Israel, then you definitely are not working within the bounds of democracy. There has to be a limit to whatever freedoms you enjoy within a democracy. So if you critique a regime, that is completely fine, and they have tolerated for so many years, and they would continue to tolerate it, as long as you're not doing actions beneath those words itself, which undermine the democracy of Israel. So I'm really waiting to see how the story develops on my own, to see exactly what they were accused of, apart from just dissent and critique, that would lead the Israeli government to revoke their licenses to be there. So I'm not really sure. I'm not sure exactly how far in depth they went with just critique. As you know for sure that it is the only democracy. No other democracy exists. I know that Gaza says it held elections and Hamas won it every year, but you exactly know how Hamas won those elections by the barrel of the gun. The Saudi, they say, is this thing, but you know it runs through, the power runs through the king itself. You know exactly the emir of Qatar faces the same thing. In Iran, it's supposed to be a democracy, but not really. The power retained by the Ayatollah regime. So we know that this is the only democracy which is present in the Arab world itself. If it is saying that these people are working against national interests, and that's why they revoke their licenses, there should be proving grounds for it. I would like the Israeli government to show exactly how these people broke their promises to the government they were working against, so that this stops looking bad for Israel as a democracy in the Arab world.
Shruti, thank you very much. We are moving on now, and you are staying with us. Israel's National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, is vowing to fight the current ceasefire and hostage release deal, calling it reckless and a threat to Israel's chances for victory in Gaza. Speaking to Khan public broadcaster, Ben-Gvir urged Finance Minister Smotrich to join him in voting against the agreement, saying their parties were elected to resist what he called a surrender to Hamas. He warned that halting the war would be dangerous, arguing that Hamas would not respond peacefully, noting in his words, they won't be handing out flowers if we stop now. Ben-Gvir also slammed the decision to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza, calling it a giant mistake and saying he was embarrassed to be the only cabinet member who voted against it. He stressed that Israel has a historic opportunity to defeat Hamas and that military pressure must continue uninterrupted to achieve that goal. We're once again joined by Shruti Dasgupta to discuss this story coming out of Israel. Shruti, Ben-Gvir is part of Netanyahu's government, a coalition which is holding Netanyahu's fragile coalition together. Does this fierce opposition show deep cracks within Israel's war cabinet, and could it derail the ceasefire altogether? And some critics would say that Netanyahu has self-interest in keeping this coalition together and then so for keeping this war going. What are your thoughts?
There are 2 points of Netanyahu holding on to power right now. Netanyahu has divided people inside his own nation. Some of them do not support this war anymore, at least this prolonged version of this war, because it does exact a very high cost in terms of manpower, resources, as well as economy from the nation. So many people believe he is trying to continue the war so that he retains power. Elections again have not been reheld since the war with Gaza has begun. So a large section of politicians as well as the supporters feel that this continuing a conflict with Gaza is a way for Netanyahu to stay in power. Contrarily, I would also like to point out that Hamas has historically proven that any breathing space given to them is a way of consolidating their resources and planning the next attack on Israel. And each subsequent attack has been more brutal, more dehumanizing, and has exacted a much higher price in life than Israel is prepared to pay for their mere existence and for the world to have peace. So basically, we have come between a question of power as well on both sides. If the war stops, if it is paused, I am very confident in when I say that that Hamas and Gaza are inseparable from each other. As long as there is a Gaza, there will be a feeling of affiliation towards the Hamas cause. So if a war is brought to a close and the last of Hamas is not wiped out, then there will be a reconsolidation of the force, and they will, if not now, 5 years, 10 years from now, we will be here again on this talking table discussing a similar attack like the October 7th and the others before it. So bringing Hamas down is a very important criteria for the existence of Israel and for peaceful existence of that entire zone of the Arab world. But beyond it, if we look at it from the political point of view, we need to understand that Netanyahu is holding on to power by the bare threads possible, and it is no longer a war is looked at by most people as his way of holding on to that power. And if the conflict comes to an end and a ceasefire comes through, he will have to hold elections, and there is a large doubt that he may come back to power as an elected head of Israel. So it's a very divided front right now in Israel, I understand it too.
Yes, thank you, Shruti Dasgupta, for your insight, as always, on those topics that we covered. We now move over to our next development, where India and Ghana have signed 4 key agreements to boost bilateral ties following delegation-level talks between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Ghanaian President John Mahama in Accra. The Memoranda of Understanding covers cultural exchange, traditional medicine, standardized creation of a joint commission for regular dialogue. The agreement aims to promote collaboration in fields like art, music, literature, certification and research. India will also support Ghana in agriculture, as President Mahama expressed a vision to make Ghana a regional food basket with help from Indian entrepreneurs. Additionally, the two sides discussed enhancing cooperation in pharmaceuticals and vaccine manufacturing, with Mahama hoping to make Ghana a hub for vaccine production. This is the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Ghana in over 3 decades, a signal of new momentum in India's outreach to Africa and the global south. Let's take a listen in to what the President of Ghana had to say.
It is a testament to the deep-rooted historical ties between Ghana and India, founded on the visionary leadership of Ghana's first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and India's Prime Minister, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, as well as the ever-growing strong bonds of friendship and cooperation which exist between our two sisterly countries for the mutual benefit of our people.
We're now joined by our guest today, Gautam Mukherjee, who's a senior journalist, who joins us to discuss this trip by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the African continent. Gautam, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. What is the significance of this trip by Narendra Modi to the country of Ghana in Africa, and how will these new deals actually help Ghana to become a regional food and vaccine hub?
Well, you know, we've had good relations with Ghana from the days of Nehru and the non-aligned movement. This is the first visit from an Indian Prime Minister in over 30 years. Current trade with Ghana is about $3 billion, and there is enormous scope to double that at least in the near future. In terms of the various agreements that have been signed, it all boils down to the implementation, but the goodwill is palpable on both sides. And so there's every expectation that this will be executed well with help from India in whatever technical capacity is required, as well as for training.
Yes, and will cultural and traditional medicine ties really boost between India and Ghana? And what does this visit mean for India's wider push, not just into Ghana, but into Africa as a whole?
I think it is, it was completely on the cards ever since the African Union was introduced as a full member of G20. And so trips to various African countries are by way of, spelling that out into concrete action, and going to Ghana in this regard is part of that. I think a number of African countries are very keen on working with India. They see it as a leader of the global South. They are keen on defense cooperation, technical cooperation in various ways, financials, as you pointed out, and as the agreements that have been signed in traditional medicine, Ayurveda. So all of this is not only popular in the West, it is also popular in Africa. And to develop along these lines is something that India can do very ably along with the Ghanaians.
Yes, Gautam, thank you very much for joining us. We will bring you more updates on that when we get it. But we move on. The Pentagon has announced it is reviewing weapons deliveries to allies around the world as concerns grow over dwindling stockpiles of crucial munitions. These include Patriot anti-air missiles and precision strike weapons needed to defend against threats like Russian missile attacks on Ukrainian cities. The White House confirmed it is limiting some shipments to Kyiv in order to put America's interests first and protect strategic reserves. Here is what Sean Parnell, Chief Pentagon spokesperson, said in a statement.
This capability review, and that's exactly what it is, it's a capability review, is being conducted to ensure U.S. military aid aligns with our defense priorities. And we will not be providing any updates to specific quantities or types of munitions being provided to Ukraine or the timelines associated with these transfers. But the Secretary will continue to make recommendations to the President for his decision on military assistance to Ukraine going forward. I mean, we see this as a common sense, pragmatic step towards having a framework to evaluate what munitions are.
The decision comes after reports that hundreds of US interceptor missiles have been used in multiple conflicts, including to help defend Israel and Qatar during last month's Iranian strikes. Officials say the review includes precision munitions such as HIMARS, rockets and 155mm artillery shells, as well as defensive systems like Patriot batteries considered vital for Ukraine's air defense. The Defense Department spokesperson defended the decision to pause some deliveries but declined to reveal which weapons were being held back. They stressed that future arms transfers will depend on maintaining a delicate balance between supporting allies and keeping US stockpiles ready for other global operations. Here's what Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Telegram.
Зараз на робочих рівнях між Україною та Сполученими Штатами з'ясовують всі деталі по постачанню оборонної підтримки, в тому числі компоненту ППО. Так чи інакше ми маємо забезпечити захист для наших людей.
Now we're once again joined by Gautam Mukherjee to discuss this further. Gautam, do you think it's correct for the US to review weapons deliveries and leave key allies like Ukraine more vulnerable right when they need this support the most? We've just reported earlier that there's 30,000 North Korean troops going over to the Russian and Ukrainian front line in order to fight for Moscow. So could this come at a worse time for Kyiv in particular?
Well, the Americans have been reluctant to get involved beyond a point. This has been made clear time and again by Mr. Trump. And Zelensky is relying more on the European powers to prosecute his war with Russia. They have pledged both armaments as well as money to keep this thing going, rather than America, which is reluctant to keep this war going endlessly. It would like to see a truce between Ukraine and Russia as soon as possible.
Yes, Gautam, we will move on now to a related development. A Ukrainian drone attack has killed one person and injured two others in Russia's southwestern Lipetsk region, according to regional governor Igor Artemonov. The incident occurred overnight when a debris from a destroyed drone fell onto residential areas, killing a woman in her 70s and wounding 2 more people. Drone wreckage kills 1 and injures 2 in Russia's Lipsk. Local officials say multiple Ukrainian airstrikes targeted this region, and it's seen as strategically important because it hosts an airbase that serves as the main training center for the Russian aerospace forces. Residents reported several explosions throughout the night, with 1 drone allegedly hitting the Energia factory in the city of Yelets, which produces parts for drones and missiles. Governor Artamonov confirmed that the strike caused a fire near the factory. We're once again joined by Gautam Mukherjee to discuss the escalating war in Ukraine. What are your thoughts, Gautam, about the conflict on the ground? Does this drone attack inside Russia once again show that Ukraine is stepping up on its strategic targets inside Russian territory? And how might Moscow respond to this?
Well, Russia is not at all happy about this. The Ukrainians have done considerable damage to their high-value aircraft, to their bridges, even the bridge that links Crimea with the mainland. And they seem to be continuing with their constant drone attacks behind the border of Russia and sometimes very deep inside. The Russians are retaliating as much as they can with swarms of drones and missiles, but both sides do have missile shields and radar, and as a consequence, only a few of them get through, whether it is Ukraine or Russia, as long as they're firing from behind their respective borders. However, Ukraine has found ways and means to get inside Russia, particularly with drones, and then release them from within Russia close to their targets. This is how they attacked so many of the aircraft deep inside Russia. So this is definitely an ongoing battle. I wouldn't call it an escalation, but it's by no means a de-escalation as America in particular would like to see.
Yes, thank you, Gautam. We move on. You are staying with us once again. A joint venture between Ukrainian drone maker Skyton and UK-based firm Prevail Solutions will manufacture and supply Ukrainian-designed Raybird drones in Britain. The companies announced the partnership on July the 2nd, saying it will fast-track production and integration of the drones into UK military operations. The move comes after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer agreed to an industrial military co-production deal during talks in London last month. UK lawmaker Ian Duncan-Smith called the venture an important step to boost the country's drone capabilities. Skyton's Raybird drone has accumulated over 350,000 flight hours and is credited with dealing with billions of dollars in losses to Russian forces. Ukraine has relied heavily on its own drones throughout the war, filling gaps in foreign military aid and air defense supplies. We're once again joined by Gautam Mukherjee to discuss this in further detail. Gautam, there is staunch support in the United Kingdom for Ukraine. Do you think building Ukrainian drones in the UK will really strengthen Britain's defence or mainly help Ukraine's war effort?
Well, Russia is objecting to all of this. Now, like I said before, the European powers are very keen on helping Ukraine in every which way. Making drones in Britain is part of that, supplying aircraft and other munitions as well as money, despite being quite hard-pressed in terms of their own budgetary constraints, is ongoing. France is equally keen. Germany has stepped up to the plate as well. So the Europeans certainly want to prosecute this war, and Zelensky is taking full advantage of their enthusiasm.
Yes, Gautam Mukherjee, thank you very much for your insight and for joining us on the programme. At least 4 people are confirmed dead and dozens remain missing after a ferry carrying 65 people sank late on Wednesday night en route to the Indonesian resort island of Bali. The vessel KMP Tanu Pratama Jaya sank just 25 minutes after departing from Banyuwangi, a town on Java's eastern coast. The ferry was bound for Gilimanuk port in northern Bali, crossing the often turbulent Bali Strait. According to local police and the National Search and Rescue Agency, 23 people have been rescued so far, while 38 remain unaccounted for. Most of the survivors were reportedly found unconscious after spending hours adrift in rough seas. The ferry was carrying 53 passengers with 12 crew members and 22 vehicles. The cause of the accident has not been confirmed, but Indonesian Cabinet Secretary Teddy Indra Wijaya attributed it to the bad weather. President Prabowo Subianto, currently on an official visit to Saudi Arabia, has offered an emergency response with 9 rescue vessels, including tugboats and inflatable boats, deployed to search for the missing. Waves up to 2 meters high hampered rescue efforts overnight, but 4 survivors were able to use a lifeboat and were found early on Thursday morning. Authorities have yet to confirm whether any foreign nationals were on board and have warned that the true number of passengers may exceed the official manifest, a common issue in Indonesian marine transport. The 1-hour ferry route between the Java and Bali is frequently used by locals and tourists alike. Marine accidents are not uncommon in Indonesia, where aging vessels, overcrowding and inconsistent safety enforcement have contributed to deadly incidents in recent years. In 2018, over 150 people died when a ferry sank in Lake Taboa. And this March this year, an Australian woman died in another Bali-bound boat accident. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev are set to meet in Dubai later this month in a fresh attempt to secure a long-awaited peace agreement. The talks come after their last meeting in May on the sidelines of the European Political Community Summit in Tirana, where both leaders agreed to maintain dialogue. In March, the 2 sides reached consensus on a draft peace deal, but Azerbaijan is still pushing for several conditions before signing. While Baku is demanding Armenia amend its constitution to remove references to Azerbaijani territory, shut down the EU monitoring mission and dissolve the Minsk group, which it accuses of long-standing bias. The 2 countries have been locked in decades of conflict over the Nagorno-Karabakh region, which Armenian forces captured in the 1993 war following the collapse of the Soviet Union. However, this Dubai meeting could prove critical in breaking the deadlock. We now move over to the Indo-Pacific, where Australia has announced a $2 billion Australian dollar purchase worth $1.3 billion of advanced supersonic missiles from the United States, underscoring its ongoing commitment to defence spending. The Defence Industry Minister, Pat Conroy, confirmed the acquisition of Raytheon's AIM 120C8 and AIM 120D missiles, which will be deployed on Australia's FA-18 and F-35 fighter jets. Meanwhile, the sale of 400 missiles to Australia through the US Foreign Ministry sales program was notified to the US Congress in April, and a further $2 billion proposed sale of US electronic warfare systems and equipment for Australia's FA-18 Super Hornet and EA-18 Growler fighter jets was notified in June. A new Army brigade capable of engaging aerial targets up to 500 kilometres away will also be equipped with the missiles. The deal comes as Prime Minister Anthony Albanese resists pressure from the United States to boost defence spending to 3.5% of GDP. Currently, Australia's defence budget is expected to rise by 2.3% by 2033. Foreign Minister Penny Wong, speaking after talks with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, has said that Australia is taking a capability approach and has already launched the country's largest peacetime defence funding boost. We stay in Australasia, where 2 people have died and 16 others were injured in a serious bus crash in southern Malaysia. The accident occurred near the town of Ayun Hitam, around 250 kilometres of southeast Kuala Lumpur, when a tour bus collided with 2 trucks, a Volvo truck and a tanker lorry. Rescue teams found 2 men trapped inside the bus and confirmed their deaths at the scene, with both victims being Indonesian nationals. 16 passengers, including the bus driver, were injured and taken to hospital, while 28 others escaped without any injury. The cause of the crash has not yet been confirmed, but this tragedy comes less than a month after another deadly bus accident in northern Malaysia, where 15 university students lost their lives. Malaysia has one of the highest road fatality rates in the region, with an average of 18 deaths daily. In response, authorities have increased efforts to enforce seatbelt use on long-distance buses in a bid to improve road safety. We're once again joined by Gautam Mukherjee to discuss this tragedy in more detail. Gautam, in a country that's already reeling from an accident earlier this year, what are your views of the public sentiment and road safety in the region of Malaysia, and how will the country respond to an accident like this?
Well, an accident is an accident, and certainly the only thing to do is to tighten up on safety norms, on every precaution that can be taken to avoid these in future. The loss of life and injuries are regrettable, definitely. But that's the nature of the beast. When they happen, that's when you wake up and look backwards. Hindsight is always 10 on 10, but all you can do is tighten up processes and be careful so that you minimize this kind of thing in future.
Yes, precisely. Gautam, you are staying with us for our next story, where Brazilian President Lula da Silva has landed in Buenos Aires ahead of the high-level Mercosur summit, where he will officially assume the rotating presidency of the regional trade bloc. With major trade challenges on the horizon, Lula is entering this leadership role with a firm agenda. His message is clear. Lula intends to use Brazil's 6-month presidency to push forward one of the region's most delayed and debated goals, finalising the long-stalled trade agreement between Mercosur and the European Union. In the face of rising global protectionism and growing economic uncertainty, Lula says South America's best response is collective strength and deeper integration. The Mercosur bloc, made up of Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay and Uruguay, is now expected to renew talks with the EU in hopes of sealing the deal within the coming months. Let's take a listen in to what the Brazilian president had to say.
E ao assumir a presidência, mandato é de 6 meses, eu quero lhe comunicar que não deixarei a presidência do Mercosul sem concluir o acordo com a União Europeia. Esta é a melhor resposta que nossas regiões podem dar diante do cenário de incertezas criado pelo retorno do unilateralismo e protecionismo tarifário.
We're now joined once again by Gautam Mukherjee. Gautam, this EU Mercosur trade deal is obviously in sight. What power does this group have? What kind of trading weight does this group of South and Latin American countries have in regards to trade in terms of a global scope? And why would the EU want to make a trade deal with it?
Well, They are certainly important countries in South America with a lot of potential. And the EU, I would imagine even BRICS, because Prime Minister Modi is going there in a few days, imminent to join Lula in Brazil for BRICS, and the fact that he's also president of this local, if you like, 5-6 country union for the next 6 months will, I think, give him greater scope to further matters with BRICS, with India, and certainly with EU. To have to deal with each country at one at a time is more problematic than making deals or treaties with a bloc, because then you get to do it all at one go, and things are able to be processed faster with less red tape.
Yes, Gautam, and we move on once again and stay in the region. Apologies, we'll move over to the Indo-Pacific, where China's aircraft carrier Shandong has arrived in Hong Kong for the first time since entering service, drawing attention both regionally and globally. The carrier, accompanied by several warships, is set to host public tours, marking a rare move by Beijing to showcase its naval power in such an open setting. The visit comes as a time of heightened tensions in the Indo-Pacific, particularly around the South China Sea, where China continues to assert territorial claims. The port call is being seen as both a display of military confidence and a message of strategic control in the region. While officials say the public will be allowed to view the vessel up close, analysts believe the visit will also serve as a soft power move aimed at reinforcing Beijing's influence over Hong Kong and projecting national unity. The arrival of Shandong is expected to dominate regional security conversations in the days ahead. We're once again joined by Gautam Mukherjee to discuss this. Is this aircraft carrier visit, Gautam, really about winning hearts and minds in Hong Kong, or is it about sending a warning to China's rivals in the region?
Well, I think it's certainly waving the Chinese flag. Hong Kong is already theirs. And to that extent, when you come to Hong Kong, what you're saying is, look at the size of my aircraft carrier and my aircraft carrier group. I am now going to be patrolling my seas, what they call their seas, in the whole, not just the South China Sea, but the region, and then further afield in the Pacific, in the Indian Ocean, and so on. There's more than one aircraft carrier, but this has been unleashed on the world as a flag-waving exercise.
Yes, Gautam, thank you very much. We now move on. Saudi Arabia and Indonesia have signed several major deals worth around $27 billion, according to the Kingdom's state news agency. The agreements and memorandums of understanding were signed between private sector companies covering clean energy, petrochemicals and aviation fuel services. Indonesian President Subianto was met with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman during his visit to the Gulf Kingdom. The two sides also agreed to boost cooperation on crude oil supply and derivatives, improve supply chains in the energy sector, and strengthen partnerships in mineral resources. Saudi Arabia's ACWA Power signed initial deals with Indonesia's sovereign wealth fund in Danantara and state energy firm Pertamina to explore investments in renewable energy projects worth up to $10 billion. Trade between Saudi Arabia and Indonesia has reached nearly $31.5 billion over the past 5 years, with both countries saying the new agreements will help drive economic diversification, boost energy transition plans, and create new private sector partnerships across multiple industries. Now let's move over to Southeast Asia, where Thailand's former defence chief, Phumtham Wechanayachai, once nicknamed Big Comrade for his student activism in the 1970s, is set to be appointed acting Prime Minister on Thursday. His new role caps a long and colourful political career that saw him rise from student protester to trusted figure within the ruling Pheu Thai party. Phumtham steps in as acting leader after the Constitutional Court suspended Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra pending an ethics probe that could take months. Paetongtarn, who came to power in August with her influential family's backing, now faces uncertainty about her political future while the investigation plays out. He will replace Deputy Prime Minister Surya Jai-Grung Rangkit, who held the acting role for just 1 day. Despite taking the reins, Phumtham has made it clear that he remains loyal to the Shinawatra dynasty, telling reporters he believes Paetongtarn will survive the probe. He stood first by her side during her debut as Prime Minister and says he will focus to provide stability for the government during this turbulent transition. We're now joined by our guest Gautam Mukherjee to discuss this ongoing and developing situation in Thailand further. Gautam, what are your views on the current political crisis, the new political crisis has hit Thailand recently? It's all fallout from this phone call between the Thai Prime Minister and Hun Sen over border disputes. What are your thoughts on the current situation that is developing in Thailand and its political leadership?
I think perhaps the last Prime Minister was suspended because of showing too much bonhomie with the Cambodian leadership, and also to a certain extent because of a lack of experience. It's her father who's an experienced person, and she not so much, and the new person that has now been appointed to take over should do much better in dealings with Cambodia. In addition to that, there is a lot of unrest, at least under the surface. In Thailand, there is a fear of an army takeover once again. There is the ever-present royal family and their influence on the politics of Thailand. There are economic woes. There are the Chinese in Thailand involved in some degree of infrastructure development. So in all of this, Thailand, even in their tourism, has undergone certain changes. It's mainly Chinese tourists in Thailand, and the rest seem to have moved on to Vietnam, which is also less expensive. So things are in transition in Thailand.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Gautam, for joining us on the programme and for your insight. We now move over to the United States for our final story from the entertainment world, where in a dramatic verdict, music mogul Sean Diddy Combs has been denied bail by Judge Aaron Subramanian. This means the rapper will remain in custody while he awaits sentencing on his 2 convictions of transportation to engage in prostitution. Diddy has been acquitted of the most serious federal charges against him, including sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy, sparing him from a potential life sentence. However, a federal jury did find Combs guilty of 2 counts of transporting individuals for prostitution, crimes that could still land him behind bars for up to 20 years. The verdict was announced Wednesday morning in a packed New York courtroom. After the jury's decision was read, Combs clapped towards the gallery, prompting cheers from supporters. But the celebration was short-lived. Let's take a listen in to what Doug Weigdor, lawyer representing Cassie Ventura, had to say.
We're pleased that he's finally been held responsible for 2 federal crimes, something that he's never facing his life. He still faces substantial jail time. Of course, we would have liked to have seen a conviction on the sex crimes in RICO, but we understand beyond a reasonable doubt is a high standard, and we're just pleased that that he still faces substantial jail time. All right, thank you. Well, each is faces up to 10 years on each. I'm not sure what the sentencing guidelines are given the various different things, but I'll leave that up to the government and to the defense to argue. But I feel confident in saying he still faces substantial.
The judge of the case denied Coombs' request for release on a $1 million bail, citing a disregard for the rule of law and a propensity for violence. The judge ordered Coombs to remain in custody until sentencing, which is tentatively scheduled for October the 3rd. Coombs' attorneys maintained his innocence and praised the jury, calling the verdict a win of all wins. But with federal prison time still looming, the legal saga for Sean Diddy Coombs is far from over. Here's what his lawyers had to say.
I can tell you that I talked to Sean. For those of you who know, I've known him for almost 20 years. And he's thankful, he's relieved, and he thanks the jurors. I think the jurors did what jurors do, which is they saw through an overcharged, overzealous, kind of a crazy prosecution, and they did the right thing.
They acquitted him of the sex trafficking, which he was absolutely innocent of. They acquitted him of the racketeering conspiracy that he was absolutely innocent of, and all of the components to it. The kidnapping, he was innocent of that. The arson, he was innocent of that. The obstructing justice, he was innocent of that. And that is no longer just me saying that. That is the verdict of our jury. So today is a great day. Today is a win. Today is a victory of all victories for Sean Combs and our legal team. So a lot of these things are still in process. I mean, the one thing I'm going to leave you with this. We are not nearly done fighting. We are just getting started. To win this and to defeat the prosecutors from the Southern District of New York takes effort from beginning to end. Today was a major, major step in the right direction, but we fight on, and we're going to win, and we're not going to stop until he walks out of prison a free man to his family.
True. The media got it wrong about Sean Combs every single day for nearly 2 years. I ask that for every time you guys see a civil lawsuit, criminal complaints or criminal indictments, you actually take a look and analyze these and see whether or not these are actually going to stand up in a court of law, because today they did not. He has not sexually assaulted anybody, certainly hasn't sex trafficked anybody, and the jury found that today. Thank you.
Well, that is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world. Thank you.